Do you hear that voice too? No more sneaky recording, obviously. Well, good morning, dear Dharma friends. David's with us. Good morning, Dave Mayer.
Good morning.
So, once again, I take myself to be Robert Beatty, a phenomenon in time and space that exists now, relatively. This is a broadcast of the Portland Insight Meditation Community. And we're in the real Portland on the West Coast. And I'm glad you're here this morning. I'm glad I'm here this morning. I have a little reading, and then maybe we'll sing the Refuges, and then we'll do some sitting. It is the 2nd of June, 2021. This is from a person I think of as a great saint of the 20th century, Mr. Rogers. The more I've learned about him, the more I understood his devotion to children. I really have great respect. I know how important it is to give up our expectations of perfection in any area of our lives. I know I've tried hard to do this, and yet I know that every once in a while, the old pattern emerges. Quote, maybe if I could make at least one proper segment of the program. And I find myself in the trap again. That doesn't mean that we can't produce highly satisfying moments for ourselves and others, but it is important to give up, maybe daily, trying to be perfect. Of course, I think we want it so strongly because we reason that if we are perfect, if we do a perfect job, we will be perfectly lovable. What a heavy burden. Thank God we don't have to earn every little bit of love that comes our way. I know how important it is to give up our expectations of perfection in any arena of our lives. I know I've tried hard to do this, and yet I know that every once in a while the old pattern emerges. Quote, maybe if I could make at least one proper segment of the program. Close quotes. And I find myself in that trap again. That doesn't mean that we can't produce highly satisfying moments for ourselves and others, but it is important to give up, maybe daily, trying to be perfect. Of course, I think we want it so strongly because we reason that if we are perfect, if we do a perfect job, we will be perfectly lovable. What a heavy burden. Thank God we don't have to earn every little bit of love that comes our way. I'm now going to perfectly play the accompaniment of the refuge chants. I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and love. Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya. I take refuge in the Sangha, the community of mindful harmony. Namo Sangaya, Namo Sangaya, Namo Sangaya. Just had an ancient memory float to the surface. I don't know if it's still there. It's more than 50 years ago. I visited the United Nations and took the tour. And there was a huge Persian carpet there. I don't know how big, really big. And they said that it had 75,000 miles of yarn in it, enough to go around the world 3 times at the equator. And part of the description was, there's a mistake in this carpet. There's an intentional mistake that the carpet makers made. Because only God, only Allah could make something perfect. So we humans do well to make an intentional mistake. And I found that a very useful teaching, because oftentimes, I'm putting in a floor or doing something and something goes wrong. And then I could say, well, that one's for Allah, right? I get to be imperfect here. So let's be imperfect in our meditation too. Let's accept ourselves as we are. And one more image. It's I forget his name, a cartoon. Anyway, there's a classic image. There's the male God guy, the guy with the long hair and so on. And he's taking the earth out of the oven. And he says, dang, it's only half-baked. And of course, that's us, isn't it? We're only half-baked. And we are evolving our way toward something, toward this moment. And we have this wonderful toolkit from the Buddha. And one of our central potent tools is sitting down. So let's do that. Let's sit down. Let's take the seat of our awakening right here underneath the Bodhi tree beside the Buddha. Let us come into contact with the sitting body. It's alive, isn't it? So there is awareness and aliveness. Temperature, perhaps, warm or cool. What if it's really true that we don't have to do this perfectly? Perhaps that we can't do this perfectly. But what we can do is be awake, here and now, to the fact of the body that exists. The buttocks that press into the chair. The aliveness in the hands. The aliveness of the face. The coming and going of the breath. Each and every breath has its moment of beginning. And this is also true of every thought. And so let us settle back into this present moment. There might be sounds in your environment. If so, they too begin and end. There is something utterly mysterious happening here. We fall unconscious into trances. The trances are in the form of the song of the self. I, me, mine, mine. We fall into the 5 hindrances. Or more, perhaps we're abducted by them. We find then awakening happens, and then awareness comes back. Mindfulness blossoms. And so with great curiosity, we notice the arising of desire, wanting. I want something different. I want more pleasure. I want more concentration. Or we fall into disliking or opposition or resistance, aversion. Or perhaps into restlessness, agitation, worry, emotional storms. Or perhaps into sloth and torpor, dullness, sleepiness, lack of motivation. Or into doubt. And doubt is the practice killer. Why would I do this? It's too hard, or I can't do it. Or if I were doing it right, I wouldn't have these thoughts and feelings. But something really miraculous is happening. Somehow or another, these all occur within a potential of awakening, within a potential of wakefulness. And so, in the midst of a wandering mind, there will quite suddenly be knowing that the mind is thinking. Moments of freedom. And sometimes the mind is just very easily at rest. And there's no need to use the breath as a home base. There's just really watching the show. Watching a thought arise, or watching the descent into unconsciousness and then emerging again. Actually, noticing the descent is not so common, but the emergence is quite possible. Other times it really makes sense to be somewhat gently but firmly diligent about staying in contact with in-breathing and out-breathing, to notice the beginning, middle, and ending of each breath, to develop samadhi or concentration. From Ajahn Chah, we have the profound teaching to bring practice into balance in any moment. Simply remember the words or the attitude. This moment is like this. The mind is like this right now. The ear door, hearing, is like this. The sensations in the body are like this. They are as they are. The mood of this moment is like this. So this might be a moment in which there's a lot of awakeness, wakefulness, where the mind is easily concentrated. Or it's a time with lots of restlessness. Maybe there's some, quote, problem in your life that the mind is wrestling with. Maybe there's grief or fear. There is absolutely no need to get rid of any of this. It will all pass away. But you can abide with it in relative ease, not adding the second arrow of suffering. Noticing how each breath actually comes out of no-thingness. It doesn't exist, and then it does. It rises, it fills, until it stops. And then it declines and empties until it stops. Please notice the nature of mind right now. Notice the mood. Is the mind crisply awake or kind of sleepy? Is it filled with thoughts? Is it worried about something? Planning something? Trying to figure something out? Curious about this the way you might be curious about the weather looking outside. And noticing now, please, the reality of the body that sits here. The contact it makes with the chair. Notice the life of the face. And particularly the life in the fingertips of whatever is your non-dominant hand. The hand you don't write with. And over the next few minutes, I'm going to invite us to eventually have the fingertips of this hand touch your cheek on that side of the body. And to do that as a loving kindness practice. And so to imagine that you're perhaps waiting at base camp somewhere on Annapurna or Everest or K2. And your most beloved partner has been away for several days trying to reach the top. Maybe a bad storm. And they're coming down, and they make it. How is it that you would reach out to touch their cheek? Or maybe you've been waiting in the ICU, and it wasn't certain whether they would come out of that coma. Or maybe it's that long, long, longed for baby that finally is born and breathes. And now allowing awareness to be in this non-dominant hand, and watch as it ever so slowly begins its journey up to touch this cheek. The cheek of the beloved. Notice every little minute detail of this slow motion movement through thick honey. Notice how you can feel all the fingers one by one if you want. And this finger, this collection of fingers and hand and arm making their way up. And noticing how at some point you can feel the heat and the energy of the hand in the face and the face in the hand. Paying close, relaxed attention until that moment of first contact. Touching, contact, present. First one finger, then another, and then another. And you're on both sides of this interaction, in the cheek and in the fingers. This is the face of the beloved. And let your fingers now explore this incredibly sensitive face. I'm so glad you made it. So glad you were born. I was really afraid you wouldn't make it down. Touching this one-of-a-kind ever face in the universe. Your face, that which you take to be your face. Wishing yourself well. It's a tactile, loving kindness greeting. Notice that you continue to breathe and there's touching. One of a kind ever. And now, making another touch or stroke or two, and then preparing for the departure. Contact always is temporary. And then notice what it takes to leave, and notice the last touch, the last moment of goodbye. And then there's the descent. But don't abandon mindfulness in the descent. We are cultivating the reality of constant presence until the hand relaxes completely, the arm relaxes completely. May all beings everywhere share in the merits of our practice. May all beings know happiness, the causes of happiness. May all beings understand suffering and its cause and its end. Well, thank you, dear friends, for coming and being together this morning. You will notice, if you care to, in the chat, there are 3 links. One is if it's time for you to make some financial contribution to PIMC, to become a monthly participant, monthly donor, or whatever, small or large. The opportunity is there to support this truly noble undertaking of helping people suffer less. And then there's an invitation to my retreat at Hollyhock, and also an announcement of candles first and third Sunday night. Loving kindness and insight meditation gatherings. You know, Ruth Denison spoke often about how with dukkha, the First Noble Truth, there's always a leak in the canoe. I really like this shirt. It's a good color, but the tag itches. This whole time with you, I've been having this irritant itch. And when I go in this morning, scissors, this tag is gone. I mean, I've had this shirt for years. Every time I put it on, it does this. So today's the day. I hope I don't destroy it somehow. So, oh, I guess I have one other announcement too, which just dawned on me. Let me see, where is it? Which is that, oops. Well, it's a couple of weeks away. I'll get the dates accurate. But I made a vow last year in December, I think. I watched an interview with Joseph Goldstein, and it emerged in the interview that he has taken 3 months a year to meditate. And it shows. I mean, Joseph is a remarkable human being, and he was incredibly privileged to do so. But I have access to a little house at the beach that one of my students offered me to have anytime. And so this will be the second time this year I'm going to go for 6 days to meditate at the beach. And that's near the end of June. So I'll apprise you further. But so have you anything you'd like to share? Any discoveries? Any challenges?
Robert, your Mr. Rogers quote, thank you so much for triggering my restless mind.
Yes.
It took up most of our meditation period because I understand his point, but there is something about aspiration. You know, my wife's a theater director, and we have a phrase between us called the last 5%. In putting together some sort of artistic endeavor, whether for me it's a vocal performance or a theatrical performance, or for her it's a production, that the more specific, the more attentive you are to the little things, the more you pay attention and really work on the craft, the closer you come to a performance that is almost spiritual. I mean, they're like, I could probably rattle off just 10 performances or productions, concerts that I've attended that I strikingly remember as being immensely powerful from a spiritual standpoint. And it was because of the craft and the attention to detail, the aspiration toward perfection. I used to sing a lot of funerals when I was a cantor in a Catholic church in Portland, and I loved it because it was a time when people would come with their hearts most open to the music, and I could serve as a channel to reach and touch them. And if I didn't attend to the craftsmanship of what I was doing, it would be less effective. I would make less of a connection. And so when I was listening to the Mr. Rogers quote, I don't think he was saying don't try to be as good as you possibly can be and try to achieve that last 5%, because it curves up toward infinity. It's impossible, which is, I think, his ultimate point. You can't achieve perfection. But if we don't try, if we don't aspire toward it, if we just accept, oh yeah, let's just go do this thing, and we'll just, let's just go do it, then we miss something. And I was thinking about that in terms of meditation. Accepting our imperfections, yeah, but I aspire to do that as perfectly as I possibly can. You use the word skillful a lot, and the more perfect union, the more skillful meditation, the more, there's something in, I don't know, being human, that it's meaningful to aspire towards something, and at the end of it, having compassion for having utterly failed, or not achieving something, the putting an imperfection in this incredibly gorgeous rug. It occurred to me, well, that's kind of arrogant to think that without that imperfection, they would see it as perfect, because of course it isn't perfect. If you went in there, you'd find it. Or they would find it, because they had this aspiration, and in the end, it would never rise to the level of God as they perceived it. My father, when he'd get a new car, he'd always go to the back of the car in some unobtrusive place, scratch it, so that he could live or relieve himself of the guilt of having put the first scratch on a car. That always seemed a little odd to me, but anyway, I just wrestle with this, because the idea of aspiration combined with compassion and responsibility is the ultimate goal. That and maybe that's what Mr. Rogers was getting to. I don't know, but it struck me odd when you first read it.
Yesterday morning, I found myself in a space of great openness, quiet mind, open heart. And I had a letter to write. It was a difficult letter to write. And I watched as a quality of tension and striving arose. Some anxiety. And then it was done, and I was aware that I was somewhat contracted again. The mind had gone. And so I went over. I'm so lucky here with my beautiful little spot. I've got a comfy chair over there. I went and sat for a few minutes, and then it opened up again. And as I was very curious about it, it's part of the tension came from trying to do it perfectly, to be sure to cover all the bases, and it's not a bad thing. It's a pretty normal thing. But hang on, I got to get rid of something here, distracting me. There. So I think of course it makes sense to do the best we can, but there's something pernicious, or there's something violent about the attempt to do it perfectly. So thinking of it in the meditation sense, of all the things, I'm going to control my mind and do it perfectly. I mean, it's ludicrous. And so it would be one thing to say, well, this is the way I like to say it. My intention for this morning, for instance, is, as well as I can, I intend to stay with the breath. I'm going to focus on concentration this morning and really notice the beginning, middle, and end of a breath. In fact, I'm going to add a mantra to it. May I be happy. May all beings be happy. And I want to do that with no stress, with no concern about failure, because I will fail. It's not going to happen. However, I have this aspiration to do it in this direction, and I aspire to not have that fantasy of perfection there, which creates the tension. So it's more a willingness to accept things as they really are from the start. And I wondered about the your experience when you were singing. Sometimes you had a profound spiritual experience. It doesn't mean anybody else in the room did. And
that's at least the feedback that I get is that it did.
Okay.
At that point, I wasn't there. I was a channel for something else. And the more I could open myself to that,
Yeah.
And I don't know, but there's craft and practice and attention to detail to get to that point.
But you,
I can't quite
but
describe it, but
the craft and attention to detail can't make that happen. It points out the direction, and that will happen, I think, when one lets go sometimes.
yeah,
You know.
that's true.
So following the instructions, guidance as best we can. You know, I'm thinking of this this time in my first marriage. There was the fight that never was resolved, and it finally ended up in a custody battle. It was the fight, and 17-year marriage. Somewhere near 2/3 of the way through that marriage, one of my students asked me to help with their wedding and to lead a loving kindness meditation. And in the car on the way to the wedding, the fight happened. It was like this cesspool that could open at any moment, and it did. And so there we were. The kids are in the car. I'm completely lost. I'm regressed in my codependent anguish, and I get there, and I'm wearing my nice suit and so on. And I go in, and I hate everybody in the room. It's like, what? I don't want to do this. And I remembered. I talked with Stephen Levine one time about circumstances like this, and he said at one point, yeah, sometimes when you're teaching, the heart is like a stone. It's like a rock. Oh, and he talked about how he had talked to Ram Dass about it. And he said, what do you do when your heart is like a rock? He said, well, you do your job. So it was a large wedding, 200-300, big church, 200 or 300 people. And I got up and I did my loving kindness shtick. Meanwhile, thinking, what a load of crap. My heart is like a stone. I mean, and being frightened, it's like, everyone's going to see through this. I mean, this is just such bullshit. And I finished. I did my nice voice and everything. I finished. And at least 10 or 15 people came up to me afterwards. Oh, that was so wonderful. You are so loving. Meanwhile, I'm thinking, like a stone. And why don't you go away? Oh, dear. So there's no telling when, and though to this point, I would say that I followed the craft really well. I did what was required, what was expected, and I wasn't self-indulgent. Well, I was being self-indulgent in a different way, but I didn't bail, and I did my role well for the benefit of the people that were there. And that was the craft. And I could do that because I'd been doing that thing. So, but in that instance, it was a performance, whereas other times I'm in it. But I think you're right. That supports your notion of the craft, that to know how to do it. And also like counseling practice over the years, so many times when my life has been in uproar. And I've walked into sitting in my office and I'm thinking, oh God, someone's going to come in here in 5 minutes. And then they come in and within 2 minutes, I'm there. That freaked out part it's back in, it doesn't exist anymore. It's unconscious. So thank you. We do the best we are.
Good morning, Robert.
Hello, Joe.
Hey, Sangha.
You look very tall with a small head.
Well,
No, there you are.
I'm on my phone.
Yeah, I can see
Better?
it.
Okay.
Either's fine. It's just kind of funny.
Oh, well, the perspective is nice. Think of it as sitting in my lap now.
Okay, I will.
I wanted to share with you that the Navajo people have the same saying when they weave their rugs, that there is an intentional mistake because only God is perfect. And I like that there is a civilization completely on the other side of the world with a completely different history, but at the same time, they are weavers. and their history of weaving and this expertise in weaving. And yet the elders, as they teach the youngers, always hand down that lesson.
Yeah.
To make sure that you acknowledge and recognize that only God is perfect, and that there is a mistake in everything we do intentionally for that reason. And it's kind of almost a blessing when I think of it that way. It's not an ego thing. It is just an acknowledgement that, once again, God experiencing itself through my fingers as I weave. And here's this beautiful thing that has been created. And it's just a wonderful thing for me.
Thank you, Joe.
To think about. Yes.
I think I'd like to just put in a little plug here. This is a mildly political statement. In this time when it's customary to speak ill of Iran, Persia was a highly developed culture when Europe was hovels. It's an ancient culture, the seat of Zoroastrianism, and at the time of the Buddha, Persia was a seat of incredibly high culture. So, just a little inoculation against the madness. Anything else anyone would like to share? Any of you quieter folks?
I guess I have a comment, and I'm not on video because I've been slowly getting back into the video, into being here, and my space that I meditate in and work, actually, my office, is such an incredible mess that I've accepted the idea that I need to clean this. So I've been taking, these past couple of days, I've been taking this 1 hour, got my headphones on, and I'm cleaning and dealing with the mess.
Mindful cleaning, fantastic.
Mindful cleaning, yeah. So it's kind of along the lines of like what we've been talking about. One of the things I really, really enjoy about you and this community is that the ability to laugh at yourself, kind of thing. So, yeah.
Thank you. Well, good luck with how's it going? How's the cleaning going?
there's I pride myself on being a minimalist, but I sure doesn't appear to be minimalist here. A lifetime of little trinkets and stuff that need to find a new place out of my face.
Just for fun, I want to show you something. I'm going to move my camera. I hope it doesn't die somehow. Oh, here, I got to get my... My wife and I had a meeting together a day ago, and I cleaned off my desk completely, and that's the dog bed. So it's hard to keep things neat. Jeez.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you. It's not easy being green.
Robert.
Pamela.
The last, 2 or 3 weeks, maybe more than that. I'm not sure how long it's lasted, but I haven't wanted to show up. And there wasn't any particular reason that I could think of that I didn't want to show up. But it was hard to concentrate. It was hard to be quiet. It was hard to meditate. And I would skip maybe one a week, or usually. But I stuck with it and did the form. I just stuck with it, and I found today that I'm really glad I did, because it's so easy to let, if you're just not feeling like it, you just skip it today. Then it becomes easier to skip it tomorrow, and so forth. And or that's true for me anyway, I should say. And I just made myself do it anyway. And I'm really glad. It's been an anchor for me in the best way. So I want to thank you for being here every day, even when you don't feel like it. Because I'm sure there are days when you don't feel like it either. So anyway, I just wanted to say it's worth it to do the form when you don't feel like it. It's what helps me get through sometimes.
How true. And there's some advice which I guess I learned from my teachers, that when people ask a question about a practice, how should I practice? That my recommendation to people always is, find a practice that works, find a practice that fits, where you've got a community maybe and a teacher, and do it for 10 years. And see, and because inevitably, no matter how into it you are, sometime, and probably several times during that 10 years, you will come to a point where it is absolutely tedious, boring, uninspiring, and you may have a dark night of the soul, a depression. But when you keep doing it, then because that is an inevitable archaeological layer. I had a little mini one of those this morning as we were practicing, actually. Very small, but like, oh man, I looked at my watch. It's like, oh man, it's only 25 after. Jeez. And I got things to do. Let me get it. But then that's so obviously became so obvious. Oh, this is a thought. This is a momentary attitude, and then it's gone, and then I'm right here again. So congratulations. I'm glad you had that's one of the reasons for having a group and a teacher, because there are many people, now for many reasons, of course, this group has shrunken, but there are many people who were very committed for some time, and now they're not, and maybe who knows what happened. There's lots of reasons to not, but I'm certain that some of them simply had a day or two or three of doubt, of lack of enthusiasm, and they went on to other things, and they lost the path. They lost this. I don't mean they're lost. They're lost in perdition, but they and over. I mean, I've been teaching for so many decades now. People come back 5-10 years later and say, I don't know what happened. But now I'm back. So congratulations. Good learning.
Yeah, it was a good lesson for me to stick with it when I don't like it.
Hello, Eileen.
Well, hi, Robert. And this is a perfect segue, because I am one of those people, and I've been meaning to write, but I just haven't felt the moment to speak. And this is it, because I am, in quotes, back after, I haven't even figured it out. It's somewhere around 12 years. I was in chaos. You're the only person who could probably date it for me, because it was when everything was falling apart for you.
Which time? Which time?
The big time with all the drama.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so let me see. I'm going to guess that was like 2008, 9.
Yeah. 2008.
Okay.
Yep.
So that was pretty much. And a couple of weeks ago, and I will go through the process. Well, hello, everybody. And some of you I recognize and know. It was just time, after so many other paths, to come back. And when I first came to a Sunday morning, my first thought was, I'm back. And then wonderfully within seconds, I thought, no, I'm not back, because the person who was there is not the person I am now. And the Robert, and both of us have grown a lot, I think. And I said, even you, who I always really so got attached to and really enjoyed, but you are, in my estimation, because I'm different, I also see a depth and everything, a change. And some of it is you, and some of it is me, and some of it is just everything. And when I look about why I left, it was that my life was in chaos and falling apart, and I was falling apart. But why didn't I come back? Why did I go down other routes that really I tried to convince myself were right? Well, I don't know, because I did. And so I'm so happy to be back. And I think that I was fortunate because Zoom makes it easier to come back and to see faces and to have that. It's a kind of intimacy, I think, that if I just walked in. So, and then some mornings, like I don't always get to sleep on time. I'm even feeling like, okay, I'm late. I mean, my alarm set, but I just needed to sleep a little bit more and then kind of get ready, make my bed, brush my teeth. But I had you on, like NPR. I could see all of you. And then I came, and there's this freedom of not having to do it exactly right. Like, it's okay if I didn't appear on screen until 8 o'clock, even though I was doing the face touching and all of that. So I don't know, I'm just an example, and I don't have any answers at all, except that I'm just so grateful and so moved. Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen.
Do you remember me?
I do.
My hair was blonde.
Did you do retreats at Cloud Mountain?
No.
No. Yep.
Just retreats at PIMC. How do you say it anyway? Do you
say it? I say PIM. Some people say PIMC, but I don't like it. So I say PIMC.
Okay.
Or the center.
Yes.
Well, thank you for that. Very nice to have that loop closed. Well, shall we go out on let's leave on an Om this morning. What do you think? Om that vibrates all the way from the heart to the crown, the dial tone of the universe. We'll Om a few times, and then I'll ring the gong, and then we get to bow to each other and head off into the world. Om. Please unmute yourselves if you wish. Om. May all beings everywhere share in the merits of our practice. May all beings know happiness, the causes of happiness. May all beings understand dukkha, the causes of dukkha and the end of dukkha. Have a lovely day, dear friends, taking mindfulness with us everywhere we go. Bye-bye.
Time to go clean the chicken coop.
Good job, Had.
And then off to the bakery.
Oh, is the bakery open?
Friday, Saturday, and Sunday we're open to the public. We're baking at other times.
Great. You've got contracts, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
We send to New Seasons.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, Tamara. Goodbye, everyone. Bye, Eileen. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you. Bye.
Here we get.
Bye, Eileen. Bye, Tamara.
Are you ready? You ready for the jump to hyperspace? Here we go. Hello, dear friends on Facebook and YouTube. Thanks for being